everybody, welcome back to Gideon Stuff. I'm coming at you today from the banks of the Rio Grande, and it's looking a little more like a grand river, isn't it? Looking a little bit more like the fourth longest river in North America. I think last time I was out here filming a video, this was kind of dry. There was just a little stream going through, but they finally opened up the dam there at Elephant Butte, and they're letting all that Rocky Mountain snow melt come down here to the Mesilla Valley because it's pecan growing season. And in fact, from where I'm standing right now, there's some pecan orchards right there. Beautiful, beautiful. Actually, I went across there the other day. There's a cave up in the Robledos back that way that I like to go to. And so I was there a couple weeks ago when the river was still low, and I'm thinking about making another trip out there. I have to ford the river, which I think would be kind of fun. Maybe I'll make a video about that. It's a really, really neat cave. I have some footage from a couple of the other times I've been there, but just haven't found a good spot to plug it in a video yet. So we'll see. It's cool stuff. But what are we talking about today? Well, this is another episode of EDC-ed blank for 2 weeks. What is this series? Well, it's a series that I haven't made an update to in about a year. It's been a while, and which is a shame because this is a series that I really, really enjoy. In this series, I take a certain genre of knife and I carry it for 2 weeks, and then I give my thoughts on that. So we've done EDCing fixed blades for 2 weeks, EDCing a fully serrated knife for 2 weeks, EDCing an assisted knife for 2 weeks, and I think button locks, EDCing button locks for 2 weeks. So in today's video, I EDC'd $5 knives for 2 weeks. So I have a whole playlist that's dedicated to this series. If you want to see those other videos, if you haven't seen them yet, you can check out the playlist on my channel. But this one's going to be a little bit different. So I've got 2 knives here, and I filmed a portion of this video before I started this whole thing, and I didn't like the way it came out. You know, I kind of talked about my thought process behind what I was doing, and it didn't really sit well with me. So I ended up scratching that. We're kind of starting all over today. So I decided that I wanted to carry these $5 knives and see whether or not there was I noticed any big change from my day to day. And I think I found out some very interesting things. So the 2 knives that we're using are this Ozark Trail cleaver and the Ozark Trail scepter knife. Now, I already did a full review on this knife. If you're interested, you can check that out on my channel. Very interesting knife. Kind of looks like the Sin Cut scepter. I think I'm going to be making a video about that here in a little bit. But I carried this knife a lot for its review. So that kind of already got calculated into this 2 weeks that I did. However, last week, I carried nothing but this knife here. And let's go ahead and talk about my experiences. All right, so before we get into this too far, let's go ahead and introduce you guys to the knives. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about this one because, again, I have a full-length review, but this video here can kind of count as a review of this knife. So these Ozark Trail knives, these are, $5, $6 at Walmart, and they're very, very simple. This one here is a steel frame lock. This one is a crossbar lock, which is kind of cool with plastic scales. Blade steel on both of these things is unknown. I would guess it's probably like a 440A, maybe a 7CR. I do know that Ozark Trail has used 7CR on some of their fixed blade models, but I don't know exactly what these things are here. So this one, kind of a very classic looking pocket knife, spear point blade, very simple ergos. And this one's a little more fun. It's got the cleaver, black wash. Actually not a bad finish on this knife here. Again, frame lock. And they are very, very rough around the edges, right? But they're $5 knives. And for that price, I actually think that Ozark Trail does a really, really good job. And that's why I chose to use Ozark Trail in today's videos, because I thought that they would last the whole week. You know, I didn't want to do something like a gas station knife, an M-Tech or something like that. That's $5 because, you know, I've had bad experience with those things. I have a video on the channel of an M-Tech knife where I flip it and it just explodes in my, like literally explodes. I can't remember what video that was. That's an old one, but yeah, it was tragic. So I knew that these knives would at least hold up a little bit better than that. Alrighty, please ignore the wet spot on my pants. I promise I didn't piss myself. I spilled a drink. Don't tease me in the comments. So a lot of you might remember that I actually unboxed these knives together, geez, a couple months ago. And during that unboxing, I was kind of unimpressed with the action on this knife. It is on Teflon washers, and it's a manual knife. And the action was not that great. However, through the carry and use that I've put this knife through, the action is still not great, but it has broken in, and it's actually broken in a lot better than I thought it would. Like, that flipper tab works. It's not a super satisfying flip. Again, these plastic washers are not super conducive to that nice free-floating action we all know and love, but it works. The detent is strong enough, and actually the thumb flick and reverse flick are pretty nice. So, I mean, look at that. It's gotten very, very smooth through my carry. And this one has as well. It was already decently good out of the box, but it has gotten, you know, a little bit better. So, pretty cool, right? All right, so I know what you're all thinking. What was the performance like? Well, this is where this video is going to get interesting. Yeah, the steel is nothing amazing. Was the edge retention great? Absolutely not. Abso-freaking-lutely not. Did I manage? Yes, I did. I was able to complete every single cutting task I had with these knives. So, let's put this into a little bit of context, though. Right now, what do I do for a job? I work in a museum, right? What do I use my knives for day to day? Cutting packages, strings, boxes, a little bit of food prep, things like that. I did not go into the field. I didn't do any field work during the time that I was carrying these knives, for which I'm very thankful. So that's all these knives saw, was my day-to-day working at a museum carry. Alrighty guys, I tried to record some real-world footage for this video during the time I carried these knives, but it's really inconvenient to try and film yourself at work or, you know, just doing random things around the house. So here's some footage of me during my lunch break eating a yummy, yummy, delicious salad. Yeah. I'm not sure what else to say about this. Ooh, look at that. There's some dressing. Isn't that wonderful? The pocket knives work just fine for things like this, and this is a good representation of some of the stuff that I use my folding knife for on just, you know, an average day when I'm not in the field, when I'm not doing hard work. This is kind of what I do. You know, one thing that people never talk about when it comes to cleaver blades for EDC is how great they are as a spoon when you're finishing over leftovers from yesterday's lunch, but you forgot to bring a spoon in with you. So I mean, I guess it kind of sort of works. Luckily, this thing's gone dull through all the use I've been putting it through, so I don't really think I'm in danger of cutting myself. I feel like a hobo. And they were absolutely fine for that. Absolutely fine. No issues whatsoever. I didn't really feel like I was lacking in any kind of performance. Now, if I was carrying this knife when I'm in the field, right? If this was my field knife that I'm using around camp, would I have felt the same way? Probably not. If I was using this on the ranch or in the woods, cowboying and stuff, would I notice a decrease in performance? I might. But I got to thinking about that a little more, and I realized that maybe I wouldn't have. Let me explain. So I had to sharpen these knives a couple of times during my EDC use. And it was definitely more than I would have to sharpen, you know, something with D2 even, right? Or some other steel that I carry quite a bit. I did do a lot of edge maintenance on these. A lot of you know that I grew up on a cattle ranch. For the past several summers, I've worked as a cowboy in the Rockies, and I've used my knives pretty dang hard. However, my grandfather, he carries an Ozark Trail knife. That's his day-to-day. That's his EDC. And he works there on the ranch. My grandpa, he's been a cowboy, worked as a logger. And how does he fare with his knife? Well, he sharpens it every single night, right? He uses it throughout the day, and then he always sharpens it every night. He has worn through quite a few knives. Just sharpen the blades away. He's used knives till they broke. He's lost them, of course, and then he'll go and he'll buy the same $5 Ozark Trail knife. My grandfather uses his pocket knife a lot harder than I think most people do. And he makes by with these Ozark Trail knives. Now, obviously, he's not using one of these exact models, but it's an Ozark Trail knife. And I think that's kind of telling, right? Yes, he has to sharpen his knife every single night. That can be a pain. But these knives are very easy to sharpen. I remember as a kid going over to my grandparents' house, and my grandpa, I remember one time, for example, he and I had been out all day. I was, 13, 14 years old. We've been out all day fixing fins. They're on the ranch. And we come back in, and my grandma, my siblings are there in the house. Grandma's making dinner. And Grandpa goes, and he sits down, and he starts sharpening his knife. He's got this little old whetstone, very simple stone. It's got a coarse grit and a finer grit. Pop, pop, pop. Throws this blade on there a couple of times, flip the stone over, pop, pop, pop. Throw it on there a couple more times, and it was shaving sharp. I remember thinking, oh, wow, that's impressive. All right, I want to show you guys how easy it is to sharpen these things up. So I've got my Work Sharp field sharpener. If you don't have one of these, you should get one. And I'm actually going to use it right now to just kind of destroy this edge. Hurts me to do that. Oof. All right, let's see what we're working with here. Yeah, that edge is completely gone. So let's put it back on there. And I think I can do this in 20 passes. 20 passes, I think, is what it'll take. So let's go ahead and see here. Switch it around. Well, actually, let's see how sharp that is right there, just on the coarsest stone. So right there, we're back to a completely usable edge. I bet I can make it even better, though. Oops, cut the choil there. There we go. I must hit that one spot wrong a little bit. Let's go ahead and fix that up. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Now, with this knife here, if you have something like a Work Sharp field sharpener, which is what I use to maintain this edge, you are going to be in great shape. If you're using this and you notice that edge losing its bite, take out that field sharpener, just a couple of passes, and you're going to have a razor sharp edge. And the edge does not last as, or I guess I should say, the edge lasts longer than you might expect. It really does. I'm actually kind of impressed with the edge retention on these knives. Are they great? No, they're going to lose in an edge retention competition to a lot of things out there. But for the price, they could be a whole lot worse. I've had Intex that go from razor sharp to spoon as soon as you pass through a single sheet of cardboard. These knives can go quite a bit longer than that. Here's some receipt paper. This knife I sharpened, I think, a day ago. And so I've been using it for a day. Let's see. Get off my nose, fly. See what it's like. That's a pretty sharp edge. That's a ridiculously sharp edge for that knife. And again, that's just a couple of passes. This knife here is probably quite a bit duller. Yeah, it's a little rougher, but at the same time, nothing to shake a stick at. And if I want to sharpen that up, it would be the work of 15 seconds. I would love to get my grandfather on the channel to talk about knives, but I really don't think I could do it. Number one, because I'm not sure I can convince him to sit down in front of a camera and let me interview him. I don't think he'd be a big fan of that. But number two, because he just doesn't think about knives the same way that I do. And the way he thinks about knives is not really conducive to a YouTube video. It's not a super interesting way. A knife is a tool so long as it suits him, and when it's done, and it's gone, it's disposable, right? And you can say, you know, maybe that's not the right way to think about it, but that's the way a lot of blue-collar working people think about their pocket knife. Just noticed my beard's a little bit cattywampus. I went on a hike before I started filming this, and so whenever my beard gets sweaty, it kind of, I don't know, crystallizes in weird ways. That's gross. So, what do I think about that performance? Mixed feelings. So number one, for just day-to-day use, the blades themselves were absolutely fine. However, I was having to sharpen frequently. And for a lot of people, having a knife with a high-performance steel like S90V or something is worth saving you the trouble of having to sharpen. I think everyone should still know how to sharpen, obviously, but that is a distinct advantage. However, these blades are so easy to touch up, a child could do it. But I think that's more of an important thing if you are using your knife in a little bit of a harder environment. Ease of sharpening is a huge deal for me when it comes to my hard use knives, the knives that I'm using on the ranch, in the woods, the knives that I take with me when I'm out in the field for days and days and days. These are the knives that I really have to depend on in difficult situations where I'm far away from my, good sharpening supplies. All I've got with me in most cases is my Work Sharp field sharpener, which is an amazing sharpener, by the way. However, for my day-to-day life, just doing normal ass stuff, I'm not sure ease of sharpening is all that desirable. If I can have a knife whose edge lasts weeks and weeks and weeks before it even needs to be touched up through very light duty use, I think that's a wonderful thing, because these are the knives I'm just going to kind of have on me throughout a normal day. And I want it to be capable, but I also don't want to have to be constantly touching it up, especially in the middle of what I'm doing. If I have to sharpen my knife after I cut my sandwich at lunch, that's not great, right? So in that case, I think these $5 knives are actually better for people who are using their knife more than an average person, right? Because if you're out working in a garage, if you're out working in a field and your knife goes dull, you pull out your pocket sharpener, throw an edge on that bad boy, and then you keep going, right? But for an EDC knife that is opening packages, cutting lunch, cutting some strings, things like that, you want that edge to last a decently long time, if not an extremely long time. So how long do these edges actually last me? Well, to be honest with you, they could probably go a week week and a half without being sharpened. I did go out of my way to kind of use them a little bit more, break down some cardboard and things like that. But if I was, you know, only using them at like work, if I was only using them for my lunch to open packages at work, things like that, they probably could last me a lot longer. So not great edge retention, right? But, you know, it's not like I was having to sharpen in the middle of all my tasks. So it's not atrocious. But my point about edge retention and maintenance still stands. It's more of an important thing for a heavy-duty knife than it is for a simple EDC. All right, let's go over a couple more performance-related features because blades aren't everything. Ergos and stuff. This knife actually has surprisingly good ergos. Not, you know, a whole lot of complaints there. Again, you can watch the full video. This knife doesn't have bad ergos. The action, again, for just getting the knife out to use it is fine. The pocket clip works okay. I'm glad that it's a tip-up carry clip. You know, as far as pulling a knife out of my pocket and using it to cut a package open, perfectly fine ergonomics. The blades themselves, we talked a lot about the steel, but the blades themselves actually have decent geometry. Both of these have hollow grinds, and they do come down to relatively thin edges, which does help that edge last a little bit longer and cut better even when it's going dull. But the blades are actually pretty dang good. All in all, these are usable tools. They are knives that are functional. The elements that matter are here. You have a blade that cuts, you have a handle that doesn't immediately make you want to kill yourself. So, you know, it's a pass, right? These are absolutely usable tools. This handle here, yeah, I would not want to break down cardboard for long periods of time, but, you know, for anything else, it's fine. All right, there's all the boring stuff out of the way, all the utilitarian stuff. Can I make do with a $5 knife? Yes, I absolutely can. If someone forced me at gunpoint to only use a $5 knife for the rest of my life, could I do it? Yes. Would I be happy? Maybe not, but I could do it. It's definitely doable. Now let's talk more about some of the enthusiast elements, because let's be honest, part of the reason I carry the knives I carry, and probably because the same reason that you carry your knives, is because we enjoy them, right? They give us the fizz. They give us the tingle. They're cool. What is a cool factor on these knives? Well, for me, I think they're kind of cool. I like this knife here is so cool to me just because it's a $5 knife that's trying to do enthusiast things. Crossbar lock, multiple deployments, reversible tip-up carry clip. This knife is very, very cool to me, and it's a lot of fun. However, both of these knives do lack a lot of the fit and finish that makes other knives so enjoyable. The action, you know, even though this knife has broken in and it does flick now, it's just not that satisfying. And this is not a knife that I would want to fidget with because this lock bar is so damn sharp. It is an incredibly uncomfortable lock bar. Look what it did to my thumb. Can you see that? Can you see that? Definitely not a knife that you want to sit down and flick open and then close multiple times. It's just going to get uncomfortable. It's going to get miserable. You're going to rip your thumb off. Not great, right? The designs are kind of uninspired, or maybe too inspired in the case of this one that was heavily inspired by the Syncut Scepter. Again, I'll probably be making a video on that next week. But this knife, it's kind of cool. It's got a little bit of its own thing going, a little bit of pizzazz. The cleaver blades, you know, those were pretty cool a couple years ago. And this is a neat looking cleaver. You know, we've got like a little saddle here. It's cool. It's not necessarily my flavor. I kind of think it's ugly, but I could definitely see someone enjoying it. So as far as like the designs go, they're kind of boring. They're really kind of boring. I really do enjoy a good-looking knife, or a knife that's very different, that's very fun. These don't really give me that feeling, which is kind of a shame. But maybe one day Ozark Trail will release a knife that's just the most beautiful thing ever, and I'll have to buy it and it'll become my favorite knife. I mean, anything's possible, right? Pride of ownership is a very important thing, and that's honestly something that companies can charge for. And I know it's kind of seen as a shitty thing to do, but I can understand a company like Microtech or Hinderer or Chris Reeves. They charge you a little bit extra because you're buying that prestige. You're buying that pride of ownership. You know, if I were to walk into a knife show and someone comes up to me and they say, "Hey, what you got in your pocket?" and I pull out a Chris Reeves Sabinza, everyone knows what it is. It's immediately recognizable, and it's kind of a status symbol, right? Something I can be like, "Yeah, I've got me a Chris Reeves." It's bragging to other knife guys. I can show that off. I can say, "Yeah, you know I'm balling." But if they pocket check me and they're like, "Hey, what you got in your pocket?" and I pull out this guy and I'm like, "The Ozark Trail Cleaver." I'm immediately the least cool person in the room, right? And again, that doesn't really matter when it comes to actual functional use, but as an enthusiast, it's something you feel, right? Now, those are my thoughts, but as any of you who saw my video about why gatekeeping in the EDC community is stupid, I think a lot of you have seen that. It's a pretty popular video. Awesome. You'll know that that's a very subjective thing. And yeah, even though this knife here doesn't necessarily give me the fizz like some other knives do, it might give you the fizz, right? Stick in there. This knife I think is really, really cool. And as you guys know, on this channel, I review a lot of really, really budget knives because I think they're really, really cool. I think it's awesome to find cool knives that are in this kind of underrated realm of $5, $5 to $20 knives that not a whole lot of other reviewers look at. So this knife kind of does give me the fizz, but I did notice that just as I was, going about my day-to-day carrying these two knives, I was like, you know what? I have other stuff that I wish I was carrying more. Again, completely a subjective thing. Alrighty, so what did I learn from this little experiment of carrying $5 knives for 2 weeks? I learned that you can absolutely do it, right? Do you get more when you pay more? Yeah, in a lot of cases, you absolutely do. Better materials lead to better performance. Better fit and finish leads to a better sense of pride of ownership. However, there's nothing wrong with carrying something like this, right? And I would say that if you're ever having to travel somewhere and you find yourself without a knife, maybe you forgot it, maybe you didn't want to try and get a knife on customs through the airport or something, I guess this really only applies to in the United States, because I think that's the only place you can buy these. Go down to a Walmart, spend $5, get yourself an Ozark Trail knife, and you've got a knife to last you the rest of your trip at least. This is something that I heard from Canadian Cutting Edge a while back, and actually, I think he got one of these knives on his channel. So, shout out to CCE. I'm sure he'll be reviewing this one very soon, so if you want more in-depth thoughts on this knife, I'm sure he can give them to you. One of the most frequent questions I get asked on this channel is, how much do I have to spend to get a good knife? And a lot of times I'll tell people you can get a usable knife for $5. And sometimes I think they think that usable means, just barely passable. That's not what I mean. I mean you can get a pocket knife that functions and will get your EDC task done for $5, right? Again, this might not give you the fizz. If it does, awesome, that's great. It might not. But if all you're worried about is using a knife, these will absolutely get the job done. And you can get some cool factor too. Ever wanted to try out a crossbar lock, but you don't want to buy a Benchmade because they're, very expensive? Don't want to buy some other knife that has a crossbar lock? You can buy this $5 Ozark Trail knife and try out a crossbar lock. And it's actually a pretty good execution of a crossbar lock. I thought that these were great. while I carried them. I didn't really feel like I was ever in a situation where I wouldn't be able to complete a task. Would I want to carry these all the time? No, probably not. But that's just because I have access to better knives. And that's because I know how to sharpen, I know how to maintain my tools. For someone who's just starting out, this is great. I would absolutely recommend giving this to a kid or giving this to someone who is just new to EDC knives, because it's a usable tool, it's a functional tool, but it'll be a lot easier for them to maintain. And, you know, if something happens, if they lose it or, you know, anything, it's not going to be a world-ending event, right? So, carrying $5 knives, what do I think? You can do it. You can absolutely do it. If you want to, if you have to. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm going to kind of echo what I said in that video about gatekeeping the knife community. If this is where you're at, that's fine. That's great. These are real knives. I want to make that clear. These are real knives. These are really, really cool, right? And if that's where you're at, it's fantastic. For me, for other people that have like moved beyond that, these are still usable, right? Yeah, I've got better stuff. I've got flashier stuff, but these are fine. So, thank you guys so much for watching. Quick shout out to my channel members right here. I really appreciate what they do. They're really, really awesome. I am doing a giveaway for members here in a little bit once we hit 8 members. I will say, these guys are on the screen here. These are my members at the cowboy level. We've also got a couple members at the nerd level. The giveaway is going to be open to cowboys, nerds, every single level. You don't have to join at a specific level to be entered into the giveaway. Giveaways are for everybody. So when we hit 8 members, we will be giving away some knives. Not these knives. Be a really, really cool knife. And yeah, so if you want to become a channel member, I would greatly appreciate it. That'd be really, really awesome. Helps me out a lot. In fact, today, the day I'm filming this, I actually got a paycheck from YouTube, which is kind of cool. $100. I used it to go and buy some groceries. That's awesome, right? I'm a college student. It helps. But yeah, we also do all kinds of cool stuff. You get early access to videos. I make member-only posts. I give you guys heads up about things that are coming. I ask members a lot of questions that I use in my videos. We have a good old time. So yeah, if you're interested, it's the blue button down below. So with all that out of the way, thank you guys for watching this video. If you liked it, leave it a like, comment below, and subscribe. Hopefully, I will have a couple of other episodes of EDC-ed blank for 2 weeks. I'm actually working on one right now, and it should be out sometime in April, I'm thinking, or May. I don't know. Whenever I get around to making it. So, thank you guys. I've been Gideon. I'll see you in the next one. Adios.